Serious, do you think if men at a young age were told to be more open with their emotions could prevent sexual assault crimes? Why or why not? I think it could help prevent suicides, anger issues, and maybe even some murders, but I don't think it would prevent sexual assaults. Sexual assault happens because the predator sees the victim as an object that they are entitled to. It doesn't really involve bottled-up emotions like suicide, rage episodes, and some murders do. I think seeing people as objects is a coping mechanism used to deny the effect people can have on you if you don't see them as objects. For example, incels condemn women because women typically reject them. If they viewed women as true people, that rejection would be magnified. If they can make women seem subhuman, then the rejection is meaningless and less mentally damaging because a mere woman's opinion holds no salt. I think if people could express this fact more openly and honestly, then they'd be less likely to go down this bitter, objectifying road. I call bullshit. All of the experiences I've had with predators, had one relationship at 19 and a few friends in recent years, they were all incredibly open about their feelings and constantly used them to manipulate me or others to their advantage, and this was often long-term and calculated. I bought into their sadness/victimhood and gave them reassurance and sometimes love. This does not prevent rape or predatory behavior. In my experience, it only helped to make it easier for them. If some people refuse to see women as anything other than objects, this is a deliberate and conscious choice. Not just some way to cope from a lack of emotional outlets. On the other hand, I've had a few friends who were inwardly ashamed of being rejected but outwardly acted like they didn't care. These bitter men actually showed me the pain they were hiding, and it shocked me how vulnerable they were when they let their guard down. In my experience, it was the ones who were constantly unloading all of their problems on me who appeared sweet and sensitive, who were actually cold and even dangerous deep down. Not all, just my own personal experiences. I mean, I guess it could depend on the motivation for the assault. For some it could be a case of the man feeling entitled to the person's body or not understanding that the person wants it by how they might be acting. That might be more of a "you need some education and respect women" juice, my bro. If the motivation maybe lies more in a resentment or hurt due to, let's say, a past event with another woman or even a motherly figure, it's possible that those feelings could have been worked through/healed/treated by talking with friends, receive support, or therapy. So I don't know if I could completely discount better emotional support for men not reducing possible violent behaviors. Also lol, even if the vast majority of sexual assault crimes are done by men, it's important to note that any one gender is capable of sexually assaulting an individual. So this could only possibility help solve part of the problem. I think less sexual assault actually would be a specific outcome of boys being able to tell somebody when they've been victimized. I once was in a scary situation where an older man was pressuring me into sex, and when I reacted as though I were triggered, I was. Past experiences of sexual assault will do that to you, he said. Oh no, poor thing, you've been molested. I was molested too. Let's heal our wounds together, as if that wasn't the last thing I wanted to do. But your comment made me think about that dude, like what would have happened if he'd been able to get the help he needed, when he needed, to stop what was happening to him. Would he still be treating it as an excuse to push other people's boundaries? My reasoning is, when children grow up with healthy boundaries, they generally realize how to respect other people's boundaries as adults. When children have boundaries that are always being stepped on, they see stepping on other people's boundaries as the norm. I see this in my parents and in the culture at large, too. Having to enforce my boundaries with them at times has been impossible, but I still think it's a really important thing to learn how to do. Thanks for replying. I'm sorry that you went through those things and hope you're doing okay. I'm not a survivor myself, also I'm a woman, so I was trying to stay away from the narrative that survivors of abuse can go on to abuse. Of course it happens and early intervention would help, I just didn't feel it was my place to make that point. It feels like victim blaming when I do it. I was more thinking of when one victim is repeatedly assaulted by the same person, and that if boys felt able to say this person scares me, the assault might be avoided altogether, or if they felt able to confide in people after one incident, it might be stopped at one. Which would have an effect, but maybe not a large-scale one. But you're right, there are lots of other ways it could be of benefit and actually reduce assaults. Excellent point about boundaries. Kids deserve to have theirs respected and see other people having the same experience. I'm doing pretty good these days. Keeping my head above water financially aside, I'm in a pretty healthy relationship and I'm proud of how far I've come. I don't believe pointing out that abuse is a cyclical thing is victim blaming, because in no way is it the victim's fault. Their abusers have suffered trauma in the past, and it doesn't give abusers the right to perpetuate that trauma. Yet it happens, and to ignore that cycle emo isn't a good idea. Saving one kid from assault might not have a huge immediate effect, although that's incredibly important for the child in question, but if it has the effect of that person knowing harm when they see it, instead of continuing to trample on those around them, then theoretically it could have a waterfall effect on their friends, their partners, their future children, etc. So this is strangely worded and I read it two different ways. Do you think if men at a young age were told to be more open with their emotions, that we could prevent men from being sexually assaulted? Or, that we could prevent men from sexually assaulting others? If it is the former statement, openness with your emotions does not prevent sexual assault. As to the latter, for example, in 2011 the CDC reported results from the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, NIVS, one of the most comprehensive surveys of sexual victimization conducted in the United States to date. The survey found that men and women had a similar prevalence of non-consensual sex in the previous 12 months, 1.270 million women and 1.267 million men. Study link. Seems that even though most people would assume men are the primary predators, that is not what the data shows us. Because this question is specifically about men, if you want the same question asked about women, ask it somewhere else. Remember, there's a higher prevalence in men being a sexual predator, whether that be against women, against other men or against children. Does that mean that women are never? No, we know there are female sexual predators, except one is more prevalent than the other as far as we can see. Maybe if men were taught to be open with their emotions early on in a healthy way, it could actually provide us more accurate statistics so we know a more accurate ratio of who is more likely to be a sexual predator, but as far as we know, that is men, so stick to the question at hand and answer accordingly. In reply to the comment that was deleted that attempted to state that men cannot be raped, I would like to say, as a feminist myself, that is complete and utter bullcrap. I personally apologize to all the men who were victims of rape who have had other men and misandrists attempt to dismiss and invalidate your traumatic experience. Any feminist that attempts to spew that idiotic crap is yeeted well away from the movement. We do not identify with, agree with, nor claim those thoughts. Sexual assault isn't a failure of emotional intelligence, it's a failure of either empathy or justice. Sexual assault happens when someone 1. Gets off on power, 2. Doesn't care who they hurt, 3. Has reason to believe the consequences are worth the risk. Remove any one of these and sexual assault would drop severely. The first is not treatable and, in the absence of the other two, isn't really a problem. Lots of people get off on power and parlay that into consensual power exchanges and don't assault anyone. So you need to either increase empathy or increase the consequences. Teaching boys about their emotions is vital. Important work in doing so would solve a lot of problems. But it won't stop sexual assault. Best way to do that is for everyone, everywhere, to start publicly and vocally condemning predatory people. I suppose it would help in certain cases, but from how I see it, sexual assault crimes are mainly because the men who commit it don't know boundaries and how to approach women they're attracted to. Some cases might be different, but I think that's the general idea, and I don't think it would help much. It would definitely help reduce other problems like suicide and general violent crimes, but sexual assaults? Not so much. There isn't a direct relation between the two, at least from how I see it. I think what you're getting at here is toxic masculinity, right? Does toxic masculinity contribute to sexual assault crimes is maybe a better question. There's a whole lot wrapped up into that term, and it's a lot more complicated than simply teaching young men to be more open about their feelings. Toxic masculinity definitely contributes to sexual assault, but if you want to remove this toxic influence on our society, it will require more than teaching men to be more open about their emotions. Also, even beyond that, simply being open about your emotions is not the same as being emotionally intelligent. If you have anger issues and you tell everyone how angry you are all the time, that doesn't necessarily help if you're not learning how to better process or cope with your anger. If someone is depressed and lonely, simply speaking up about it might help them process those feelings, but that's usually not enough. Therapy, the effective kind anyway, is often about much more than just talking to someone about your feelings. It's also about learning to process those feelings in a healthy way, and most importantly about changing your behavior in a way that improves your mental health. Yes, I personally think that's a definitely. Is it going to prevent all of them? Hell no, way too many effed up people for that. But learning to be open about emotions equals more learning about how to deal with emotions equals more stable state of mind and emotions. Which then leads to more discipline, critical thinking, etc. Punchline in my opinion is that being told, and being more open about emotions equals more emotional growth, which will prevent some possible predators from ever existing as one. Keep in mind folks, Most sexual assaults don't happen in the got beat down in an alley and was raped type of way. Most people know they're abusers. They're people who someone might have been dating but went too far. They're people who figured a very intoxicated person who doesn't say no equals consent. They're people thought of as safe to be with friends and mistook kindness as sexual attraction and then didn't take no for an answer. Yes, assaults happen in the got beat down type of way, but it's definitely not a representation of the average sexual assault. So yeah, I definitely think it could reduce and thus prevent some cases of sexual assault. Yes. Not telling though, active involvement. Usually I see guys explode when they're drinking and have a lot of pent-up emotions and frustration. The same goes for gamers. When reality doesn't meet expectations, we get frustrated. When we handle problems when they're small and talk about frustrations when they first begin, the issues don't blow up later. In relationships, that seems to be better to talk about issues when they're small before they become years of building up. It takes time to change behavior and to learn how to act around one another. My personal perspective. Your experience may differ. Unfortunately, however, boys at a young age when they're growing seem less interested in effective communication skills and more about competition and physical activities. Talking about emotions isn't interesting in a lot of cases. I wanted to ride my bike, read and play Red Alert. A lot of guys seem interested in tackling and wrestling one another and doing competition. Talk was usually its own competitions of one-upping and dissing or cheers. Girls, however, communicate at great lengths starting at a young age. They'll draw letters and explore finer details in language and writing. Girls formed small communities, paid attention to dress and appearance, and collaborate everything. Now I see a lot of men who are frustrated because they just don't know how to be social, how to talk, dress, act or have many people to open up to. But that's a very conservative kind of culture that I struggle with at times. The guys I've seen that do well are effective communicators and have people to talk to. I am going to take the stance that yes, it would reduce the number of sexual assault crimes. I don't have any data to back this up, but I believe that sexual assault crimes are the result of a cascade of failures in the life of the perpetrator. Many people use the arguments that it is about power or that it is about seeing the other person as an object rather than a human being. I think that many of these claimed behaviors are a direct result of men being expected to be stoic and unfeeling all the time. When you aren't able to reach out to others with emotional problems, you are forced to resolve them yourself. Resolving those problems in isolation can cause some to come to unjustified or unappealing conclusions. These bad solutions fix their emotional distress but also implant beliefs that others might think monstrous. When we talk our feelings out with others, we can get help. They can suggest solutions and point out when our solutions aren't as right as we think. TLDR, I think talking feelings out early would reduce the number of people that otherwise convince themselves of beliefs that can lead to sexual and non-sexual assault. No, because I don't think being more open with their emotions is actually what men need, from an emotional wellness standpoint. Women benefit greatly from just talking about their emotions and problems. That's a good thing. The issue is when that gets extrapolated to mean that men should also benefit from just talking about their problems. Men tend to prefer finding, or being helped to find, actionable solutions to those problems. They want to figure out what to do about a problem. In the spectrum of description, greater than solution, women tend to value description, feeling heard, finding empathy and emotional support, etc., where men tend to value solution, finding answers, working out an actionable path forward, etc. When we say men should be more open with their emotions, what that really translates to is men should act more like women. That's not a very male-friendly plan, and what it tends to do is just make boys and men feel like their way of processing things is wrong or invalid. I don't think so, no. If I had to venture a guess, sexual assault comes from dehumanization and entitlement, not emotional repression. What it would do is lower suicide and substance abuse rates in men significantly, both of which are strongly linked to emotional repression. It might also go a long way towards dispelling the myth that sexual predators are overwhelmingly men. They're not. It's close to 50-50, as victimized men feel more comfortable coming forward. A huge benefit additionally would be in relationship health. One of the big disconnects between the sexes revolves around emotions, as the repression impressed upon men leaves them cold and distant to those who aren't cognizant of the effects of repression, of the mental and emotional health consequences of being denied such simple concepts as touch and showing vulnerability. I was sexually isolated, it happened between the years 9 and 10 years old. I tried to tell, but I've said in my comments, no one believed me. It's emotional wrecked me. I bottled shit up for so many years, then I got help, then I stopped bottling shit up, Suffice to say, I'm not about one of the only guys I know that is emotional on levels where I've been called a woman too many times. I don't cry that easily, but I'm not an asshole. I always am told I'm very nice to everyone, which is true, I just am. But inside it's all me screaming and crud, ugh. Yeah, having some difficulties typing this, so yeah, I was raped. I should have not have bottled it up ect. I think encouraging men to be more open from a young age would currently create more problems than solve any. The problem doesn't lie in men not being open, it lies in society absolutely destroying them for being open. They're ridiculed, seen as weak and undesirable for being so, and attacked by men and women alike. Men's social role is so heavily dependent on being reliable that it's so ingrained the general population don't even notice it. Once a man seems weak, he's no longer reliable to protect. Once he shares his trauma, his pain, his fears, he's no longer seen as strong and reliable. Everyone looks for a superhero, for a rock to cling to when all seems to fall apart. Men only get positive attention when they are that rock, and the only way to be that rock is to hide how they feel. It's a matter of compromise. I hide my emotions but I get the attention and affection I desire, so it's just a trade-off. A very toxic one that never works long-term, as we see so many men break down or develop toxic habits. Men neglect their own mental health to such a drastic degree it literally boils down to I will forego every piece of mental health, to be reliable and useful to everyone, just so long as I get sex I'll be happy because sex is a huge bundle of physical and emotional intimacy. I know because I've been there, in fact I still am there. I compromise my own feelings, let myself sit in uncomfortable situations, hide my opinions and feelings, because the second I don't I'm a problem. I'm seen as weak and bitching by my male peers, and unreliable and undesirable if not scary to my female peers. Example, I had a friend, no longer a friend, who disrespected me and crossed my personal boundaries. I blocked him, and refused to allow any contact or dialogue about it. I told him he fucked up too far, and that was it. Fast forward a week or two, I'm invited to a friend's house party. Ex-friend was there. Rather than cause any issues, I dealt with it. I tried my best to engage with everyone else and ignore this ex-friend. However, it didn't matter because this friend was constantly in my shit, bugging me, demanding explanations and a dialogue about my decision. Everyone just let it happen, no one said a word. I told him no, over and over, and did my best to ignore him and just enjoy the party. Eventually I had enough, I snapped. As calmly as I could, you could hear the mounting frustration in my voice. I told him this is neither the place nor the time for this, we are guests in so-and-so's house. If you really want to talk about this, we can step outside. Immediately there was an uproar, that I was being harsh, that why am I getting angry when he just wants to talk. I in no means meant let's fight, just purely that in the middle of a party is not the place to have a heated conversation. TLDR, in today's social climate, men being open is considered weak and undesirable, but also men standing up for themselves is considered toxic and scary.